Okay, we're going to get started. So we'll definitely have plenty of time at the end for networking, so don't worry. Maybe put a pin in that conversation. We're going to prioritize this now. I'm going to start using a lot more product lingo because I think there's a lot of PMs here. So don't worry. We'll have plenty of time for networking. This is actually just a way for me to work on my stand-up routine, so thank you all for coming to my stand-up. So for those of you I haven't met yet, my name is Aman. I head up the product team at Arize. We are a company that helps other companies that are shipping AI and agents in production actually make sure that their agents and apps work. There'll be more on that and evals and all these like fancy words around, you know, what does it actually mean to get an AI into production later on. But I kind of wanted to set the stage first for the folks in the room here that are on the product side to kind of set the tone of like, why are we all here? And I think we're here because we know that deep down, the PM role is changing. It's changing in front of us in real time. The expectations from our stakeholders, the expectations from our customers, our executives, like we as product people have even more on us now than we did 6 months ago. It's because the tools are changing, the infrastructure, the landscape is changing. So like many of you, I've kind of been on this journey of trying to figure out how does my role kind of fit into this world of someone who thinks about product, thinks about customer experiences. And to that end, I've been trying to have more conversations with people on their experience here. And so that's really what I kind of urge everyone to kind of think tonight is, you know, as you're talking to others, other product people, maybe thinking about how that role is changing, how other people are seeing AI enter the product role is really kind of what I'm hoping we can foster a little bit more tonight. So with that, I'm going to kick us off with a panel. So we're going to do a panel first and then a little bit of a presentation of a real-time, like how do evals work and what are evals? And for some of you may already know what that is, but we'll kind of do this like no-code, low-code eval presentation. And then we'll open it back up to you know, networking. So feel free to stay until GitHub kicks us out. So so thank you to our you know, GitHub for hosting this. It's an amazing office. So yeah, we're super excited to partner with them. OK, so with that, I'm going to ask our panelists to come up on stage, and then I'll give a quick introduction of them when they get up here. Yeah, feel free to sit wherever. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. OK, so I'm going to go first in order of Bihan, who's sitting next to me. So Bihan leads product at Decagon, a company building multi-channel AI agents for customer experiences. Previously, she spent 4 years at Scale AI as an engineer and product manager across the enterprise, public sector, and Gen AI teams. Wow, OK. That's a lot of teams. Helping model builders train more powerful models. She earned her BS and MS in computer science from Stanford and is originally from Texas. Hey, so am I. And then to my further left, I have Gabriela de Queiroz. She's a product-driven AI leader with 15+ years of experience across startups, enterprise, and research. Most recently, she was director of AI at Microsoft for Startups, where she helped early-stage companies build and scale AI products with Azure and GitHub. Before that, she led AI innovation at IBM. Gabriela is also the founder of Our Ladies in AI Inclusive, 2 global organizations advancing diversity in tech. She's passionate about making AI accessible and brings a unique lens on building real-world AI systems, driving strategy, and closing the gap between product engineering and users. Thanks, Gabriela, for joining. Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you both for being here. And Gabriela, I believe that you actually used to host a number of events in the GitHub building too. So it must be, and all the staff was really excited that you're here. So,
yeah, and thank you so much for this panel. Yes, I do host monthly events here at GitHub. I have one coming up on June 11th, another one on June 24th. You can check on Luma.
Awesome.
So yes.
Yeah, I love that. So, and keeping the dialogue going with PMs. So, so I think just to set the stage, we're going to talk about a couple of themes here. I think that are going to keep coming up. We're going to be talking about like customers and metrics, strategy and execution, and then a little bit about what's changing about the role going forward. So maybe kicking off with you, Bihan, can you maybe tell us a little bit about what you work on at Decagon?
Yeah, of course. And yeah, thank you so much for hosting, and thanks everyone for being here. Super excited to share some of what I've learned so far. Just a little bit of background first about Decagon, what we're building, and then what my role is there. We're building AI agents for customer experiences across the enterprise, across all different channels. So for companies like Notion, Hertz, Chime, Rippling, we power their entire support experience. So if you're ever writing into support over chat or calling over email, calling over the phone, that's us. And so what I do there is pretty much like all of product. And so what that means is building the platform to enable our internal team and our customers collaborate on building these agent experiences. And so everything from, what is the knowledge that is getting used by these agents to what are the workflows that these agents are following and the APIs and the tools that they have access to experimenting and testing and launching the agents and measuring the impact that they have once they're rolled out into production. All of that product surface area is, I guess, what I'm thinking about on the day-to-day. So there's a lot of different areas that go into building a really good AI agent. And yeah, excited to share about some of the lessons and learnings that I've learned over the past 7 months here.
That's awesome. Awesome. And so, Gabriela, on your side, when we were chatting about this, you mentioned that you work on GitHub models. Could you maybe explain a little bit more about what your role is in a larger organization? I'm sure wearing a lot of different hats, but what were some of the areas of focus you're working on with GitHub and Microsoft on the AI product side?
Yeah, and I have to say that we had this conversation. So I was with Microsoft until Friday, so I was part of like this huge layoff, 6,000 people. But I'm here today, so like I'll talk about my time at Microsoft. But yeah, so like it was very interesting, my role, because I was wearing different hats as a director of AI, from talking to startups, trying to help them on which model to use, how to use, if they were thinking about guardrails, responsible AI, etc. And on the other piece was all about product feedback. We would be like the beta tester, or we would do like bugs and create bugs and do, I'm just blanking the name, but anyway, we would meet and go through all the edge cases and try to break also like the product to see if it was working. We would provide user feedback, startup feedback to the product as well. So GitHub Models was one of the projects or products that I worked on, but there were a lot of like Azure specifically for startups that I worked on very closely for the past 2 years.
I think maybe just doubling down on that a little bit more, I'd really like to understand, like, in this world of people that are building products with AI, like the core product is AI in some way, in a model or it's an agent. Could you describe a little more, maybe starting with Gabriela, like who are your customers? Like, who are the people that care about this, and what do they come to you asking for? What are some of the features look like here?
Yeah, so my customers, mainly they were startups. They were not enterprise. They could be like developers from startups, and they would come to us. One of the main things, I know that it's silly, but would be like, how can we make sure that the product is easy to use? When you are in an enterprise environment, usually the product is very complex. There are so many features and functionalities that from a startup standpoint, it's very complicated. So how can we lower the onboarding friction for startups, and how can they go into the product and use the product in like a few minutes? The sign up should not take like 20 minutes. It should take like 1 minute, right? So a lot of things that we inspired ourselves on or from were like startups like Vercel. Like the sign up process is so easy, and we needed to do something like this. So GitHub, it's easy. Everybody has a GitHub account, but when you talk about products on Azure, the whole sign up, it's a long process. So we lose a lot of customers on that pipeline. So that's pretty much my main focus was thinking about and get feedback from the users. Okay, what is your main pain points when using the product? Oh, it was the onboarding. And then we would go to the other levels more in details. And GitHub was an easy way for us to win startups because the onboard friction was very low.
Wow, okay. I can relate super hard to this comment. I don't know if other people can too, but like, I feel like even in the age of AI, we somehow haven't figured out how to just make onboarding easier and easier. So that, and I feel like working at a large enterprise or like a more, a product that's been around for longer, that's even more salient is trying to get the team thinking about that.
Yeah, exactly. And the changes, it takes a while for the changes to happen because you need to go through like several layers. So it's much harder for us as an enterprise to make changes because you have to go through several layers and you have customers who have big enterprise, but we also have startups. So like, how do you balance these two sides of the coin, right?
Yeah. Bihan, maybe elaborating on that, what's similar, what's different at Decagon here? Like, who are your customers? What do they care about, given that it seems like the core product is an AI agent here?
Yeah, I definitely resonate with the onboarding friction. It was something that I actually hadn't thought about that much since our core product is like the agent itself. But actually, once we did a survey of the salespeople, they were saying that the top complaint that they heard was that the onboarding was unintuitive. So we actually just did an overhaul of our onboarding experience as well. But for our customers, a lot of our customers are these enterprises who have pretty complex customer support functions. And so if you think about most companies have some form of customer service or customer support. But where they find the most value out of a company like Decagon is if they have pretty high support volumes and moderately complex to pretty complex use cases. And this is because as companies are scaling up their growth, they don't want to scale their support function linearly. And so as they're growing, they're thinking, how can I make this more efficient? How can I reduce costs? How can I drive a higher ROI without sacrificing the member experience? Because I'm sure everyone here has probably written into customer support. Oftentimes, you might have a very long wait time, and by the time that you get to a human, they might not even be the right person to help solve your issue. And so what we build is this AI agent that is kind of sitting in front of that experience. It makes it so that you have these instant responses that are hyper-personalized to you, understands kind of your past history, your interactions, and has access to just the necessary amount of information to be able to resolve your issue for you. And so a lot of our customers that we're working with are these like mid-market to large enterprises. And the personas that we're working with within these organizations are typically leaders of customer experience, customer success, but then more and more we're also seeing a lot of engineering and product leaders as well, because a lot of their initiatives around support are going to be very AI driven. And so it's the combination of the kind of support ops leaders as well as the product and engineering that I think is kind of a new mix. Yeah.
Interesting. So it seems like if I could maybe try to like interpret that a little, it's like your customers are other PMs at times that really also are being told, hey, you need to care about the support experience and use AI in it to some degree. Is that an accurate characterization?
Yeah, for sure. More and more.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I want to get one level deeper on some of the meat here. So we've talked about your customers. What do they care about? What does the day-to-day look like? Onboarding flows don't go away. They need to get better. How do you think about AI product strategy? Like, what does that mean in your respective organizations? When we think about strategy, in the traditional PM role, we've thought about, okay, let's do our quarterly plannings. Let's like get everyone together and think what are their OKRs, and like do initiatives. Like, how much of that remains the same versus what's different when you think about, as a PM, you're responsible for the strategy of the product? Go ahead, Gabriela.
I think it changed a lot. Like, there is no time for like this planning anymore. You cannot even like at Microsoft, we had semesters, and then we are like, oh no, semester is too long now. It needs to be quarters. And even quarters, I think it's so hard to predict because now the velocity of like AI and all the new things that comes up almost every day, there is no way that you can have like even like a roadmap. The roadmap is like almost like for the next month at most, right? You need to change. So like, I feel like the roadmap, the planning, it's much more dynamic than it used to be because otherwise you are behind. And the other thing about the AI product is like there is a whole discussion, and especially on the startup side, in the enterprise as well, should we embed this AI into the product? And if so, why and why not? And there is a whole discussion around, it depends. Like not because AI could facilitate some of like the capabilities that we have, but it can change the whole workflow and the whole UI, the whole way that the customers are used to work with your product. So you have to have like a balance between what are the trade-offs, right? Should we embed or not this new feature, this new product? Or maybe we should create a standalone product to accommodate this new innovation and keep the other product as it is, which we see all the time, like a new feature or a new capability, now it's a standalone product. It's not part of like the whole package that we had.
Super interesting. So not only is the way that you work different, but how you think about should AI be in the product or its own product is something that like something to consider, you know, as part of how you scope out new products. So. Bihan, I'm curious, like, how does this work at a startup? Aside from the craziness of like a normal startup craziness, like, what does it look like making decisions in Decagon, you know, from both the product side for the agents or like new product lines? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think I resonate a lot with what you said on timelines definitely being very condensed and condensed even further at a startup. Like sometimes priorities can shift like day to day or intraday. And I think what's been working well for us is we have, you know, these sessions where we think more long term, hey, here's the general shape of the direction where we think everything is going. And to get there, there are these like top level categories of initiatives that we need to do. For example, we know, you know, like if we're going to work with larger and larger enterprises, there's a certain set of features that we need to have to be able to support them. And so we know at a high level what are these top categories, but within these categories, the actual features themselves can look very different or shift week over week. And so what we have internally is our sort of like 18-month roadmap with like maybe 6 or 7 key product pillars or initiatives. And within that, the prioritization of what we're doing week to week can change. And we just maintain, I guess tactically, we just maintain kind of a running list and constantly revisit the priorities of what's on that list. And oftentimes we're doing multiple sort of projects in parallel that might be you know, conflicting with each other, or you know we would only go with one of them. But because things are changing so quickly and because models can be a lot more unpredictable, there's this need to do a lot more experimentation and testing and try like 10 different paths instead of knowing sort of you can reliably count on one path. And so baking that into the product planning cycle and adding that buffer for experimentation has become more of a standard part of our planning process.
That's super interesting. It's somewhat very relatable actually to have this like broader set of initiatives and then sort of a list that you can kind of pull from on a very adaptive basis from what it sounds like. And then just factoring in that because there's AI behind the product, you'll need to actually bake in time for experimentation. That's actually a good segue into like the next kind of, kind of like thought on my mind, which is what's hard about building products around AI? Like, what are the things that, I'm sure that there's a ton that works well, but maybe tell us like, what's the hard part about building products around AI that, what's the quiet part out loud here?
Yeah, for sure. And I can start with this one. I think one of the hardest parts is just that there is a lot more inherent unpredictability. So for example, if you're having some initiatives around fine-tuning different models, it's not clear that what you're trying is going to work. And so that sort of ties into what I was saying with like, maybe your one approach is to fine-tune a model for a certain task. But in parallel, you might have a couple of other engineers working on some infrastructure improvements. And so having for every problem like a hypothesis or a group of hypotheses that you can test in parallel is super important. Because I think we've learned that if you try to do them more sequentially, like one of the problems is that you might have a certain product feature that's blocked on some certain like requirement like taking place. And so I think one of the challenges, in addition to just the unpredictability, is also the reliability. And I think this is more on the customer-facing side, especially because our company, we're building AI agents for customer experiences and customer support. They have very strict requirements around the reliability and the predictability of the product itself. And so then what that means is that we have to build as part of our product a very robust and comprehensive way to like test these agents and kind of prove to our customers that the agent is reliable enough before putting it out into the world.
Yeah.
No, I would say the same thing. Like, I think it's still like it's so brand new, a lot of things that we are doing, that there is a lot of like uncertainty, and we need to kind of like get the trust from the customer. They need to understand what we are doing. They don't know. Like sometimes we talk to them and they are afraid of like, what is this thing that you are doing that is not reliable, or there is some uncertainty? Is that going to affect my outcome or what I'm doing? What about the trust with my customers? That's another big piece. And then when I think about AI and agents and everything that we are doing right now, there is no standardization in terms of evaluation at this point. There is a lot of discussion. It's not like standard as, if you think about machine learning, it was very standard. Like, these are the metrics. This is what you have to look for. This is what you have to be following. These are the things that you should be doing. It was kind of like a recipe in a way, where now it's like there is so many things that we don't know. And like, how can we translate that in a way that the customer understand what is happening, and also like, how can we make them trust on what we are building?
It seems like that's like a very common theme, which is reliability, quality, and then conveying that, communicating that trust back to the end customer. Any thoughts around that, actually, just on that quick note of like, what are some of the ways that you convey that the agent works reliably? When someone asks you this, like, how do you respond with like, what do you show them? What's the data, or is it something else?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for us, what we've, I guess, adopted internally, and also what we've started to push onto our customers, is the idea of sort of test-driven development and treating an agent as a product that you would do normal testing around anyways. And so what this means is, in the initial sort of scoping phase, when we're starting to build out the agent together with our customers, we will work with them to develop a set of evaluation criteria. This can be things around the tone, the brand, but also around like the accuracy of the response, or even subtle nuances, for example, like the terminology that it uses. And so working together with our customer to build out this sort of golden data set or golden test set of like tests that they want to run and make sure adhere to some sort of evaluation criteria before launching the agent into production is the new sort of standard practice that we're doing with all of our customers. And because this is an ongoing process, you are going to be building out and evolving this test set over time. Generally, when you are building your agent out in the first place, you're not going to think about every single edge case. And so there's going to be some set of customers in production which might interact with your agent in a way that you don't expect. And so as you're rolling out your agent to customers, having that continuous feedback loop and monitoring, and having some way of reviewing those conversations to continuously add to your test set, and then make sure that any changes that you're making to the agent don't regress, is sort of like the best practice that we've been using.
That's awesome, and like showing that to the customer. That's amazing, actually. Gabriela, do you have something you want to add on?
No, one thing that I'm thinking is like, how do you scale that, right? Once you have like thousands and thousands of customers, how do we scale that practice? Which is probably something that maybe we don't know yet. Like, how can we scale this out to several customers? And I was going to say the same thing. It's like trying to build together with the customer so they understand what the process is, what is in the game, what is in place, what you need to do, what are the pros and cons. It's kind of like educating them as well in this process, right? It's a key piece is educating your customers on like what is possible, what is not possible, how we are evaluating, what are the instructions that you have to pass to your agents. What are the guidelines that they need to follow? What are the guardrails? Like all of like these steps that we need to have when putting an AI agent in place.
Yeah, it seems like a small company problem, medium company problem, big company problem. Any stage you have to be able to convey this. Cool. We're gonna open it up to questions. Ankur, if you're at the front, do you mind just running the mic for folks as they raise their hand? So you can take this mic. All right.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for hosting this event. My question goes around, how you mentioned fine-tuning models, right? So do product managers who are now developing AI products supposed to know all of these things? Because these are pretty much stuff that either machine learning engineers know or software engineers might know, right? So are we as PMs supposed to know all of this stuff, and to how much in depth? Can we just leave the technical elements to the engineers? Thanks.
Who wants to go first?
No, I think that's a great question. And like, I'm not a PM myself, but I work with a lot of PMs, and I do wear a hat as a PM, AI PM, every now and then. I feel like it's been changing a lot, and you should know. You should know enough to talk with your customers or with the engineers or with whoever you are working with. Maybe you don't need to know like all the nuances and how things are working in a very detailed way, but you need to have a sense of like what is good, what is bad, what are the pros or what are the cons. And also like, I see a lot of AI PMs doing like hands-on, yourself included. It's like you do like go to the code and do a lot of Python, you do a lot of like tasks yourself. So I see that is changing in this career. It's kind of like expected for you to know, but not in a deeper level, maybe as an engineer or ML engineer or AI engineer.
The boundary is shifting, it seems like.
Yeah, I think what's most valuable that a PM can do in working with these research engineers or software engineers who are doing the fine tuning is to have a really good understanding of the data that is going into these models. And I think, especially from my time at Scale, like our whole business was like selling data. And so I think developing a taste for what is good data and what is bad data is really important, because the most important component of like fine tuning is the data that's going into it. And so if you're able to identify, what are the actual, like labels that we need, what are the examples, like how many examples, like how does the diversity of examples look, and then like use that to like work with the research engineer. I think that's probably one of like the highest leverage things that you can do as a PM.
Yeah. No, awesome. I think we have time for one more question. Although I feel like I could keep talking to you guys the whole night. It is super interesting to hear.
So my question is related to competition. I know the support experience is a highly contested market space, and underneath that, AI capabilities are evolving so rapidly. I'm wondering how you navigate that, carving out your competitive advantage in that environment.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think definitely support is a really competitive space. And I think on the product side, the approach that we're taking is with like a very sort of customer-centric approach. So how we're approaching the product building process is like anything that we're building for our internal team to build out the agent, we want to expose that to the customer as well. And what that enables is our customers, they feel much more empowered and they feel much more like a higher level of trust in the system, because they can feel the AI themselves, and they can feel a lot more confident before rolling it out to their users. What this also enables is, because we've invested so much in the self-serve part of building the product, our customers are not blocked on our team if they want to make any changes to their agent. And so what people choose our company for is first the speed, and then second, the observability and reliability. And they all sort of tie together because we've invested a lot in building out the platform rather than building out point solutions. Customers are able to iterate much more quickly, have that observability and insight to why the agent is behaving the way it does, and then take that insight and feedback into the platform and self-serve change things. And what this results in is just, at the end of the day, a higher like resolution rate or member satisfaction score because the customer is able to iterate on these agents so much more quickly.
The platform-driven approach there, yeah, to differentiate. Gabriela, do you want to add anything in terms of like competitive landscape, models, any thoughts there?
In general, there is so much going on. I feel like there is competition everywhere. So how do you stand out? I think like being a niche, especially as a startup, finding your niche and then going deeper into one niche, it's much, much better than being generalistic or generic, building a solution that, we didn't talk about that, but like where there are customers, right? So like instead of like thinking about the technology, think about what the problem you're trying to solve first, and if there is a need, and if you have customers, and then you go and use the technology, whatever technology is better suited for your use case. But yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, please give a quick round of applause, to both of our panelists here for agreeing to do this. They will be hanging out a little bit after this as well, I believe. So if you have any burning questions, please feel free to find them. But yeah, thank you both so much.
Thanks so much. And
Yeah.
I just want to say, I love your work. I admire your work. So this is on the record because you do like a lot of like great work as, showing how to do the hands-on piece, but also like on the other side as well as a PM. Like I love like how versatile you are, and that's the face of like our AI PM now. It's like we have to be hands-on, but we also have to have the other side as well. So thank you so much.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting.
Yeah, thank you both for coming. Yeah. Thank you. So next up, it's going to be a little bit more of me. Sorry, guys. I'm still up here for a little bit. I promise I will give back time for people to network. So, we'll try to go through this one and make it fun and engaging. I will leave time at the end for questions for this, but I wanted to quickly, if Kyle is on the projector. Oh, perfect. OK, awesome. So I think that's a great segue, as we were talking about, like, what's really important if you're building products around AI is making sure that the quality is what you expect it to be, the reliability is what you expect it to be. What I'm going to walk through is actually a pretty quick, workshop I gave that actually shows how to run evals as a product manager. When we're talking about evals for your end product, what does that mean? And then what are some tools, and go into a little bit more depth here as well. Yes, slides will be shared out. We'll send them out on an email link, and then it is interactive. If you feel like pulling up your laptop, you can feel free to follow through, but don't feel pressured to. We'll share it out afterwards as well. So a little bit about me. Just by way of background, I've actually worked in the ML and AI space for a few years now. So I actually started my career working on self-driving cars at Cruise. Sadly, they're no longer around. But I actually worked on evals for the perception team there back in 2018. And then moved over to Spotify's machine learning platform, where I kind of worked across a number of data science teams working on AI ML features, primarily in recommender systems. And now I work at Arize. So Spotify is a customer of ours, along with companies like Uber, Reddit, Instacart, Duolingo. So a lot of really tech-forward companies that are building with AI as their core product. And so as it's a very privileged position in the sense that I get to learn from these really amazing customers what their workflows look like and try to build them tools to ship products that work reliably in production. So that's a little bit of what you're going to see in terms of the workflows. It's actually taking some of those best practices that these companies, like really amazing companies, use for their AI products. So what we'll cover, we're going to keep this pretty brief in the slide domain so we can get into a live demo. But I'll talk a little bit about what are evals, just to contextualize, and then we'll actually do some of this live in real time. So who's the session for? So I would kind of, this was a post I did with Lenny. Actually, quick show of hands. How many people listen to Lenny's podcast or are subscribed to newsletter? Okay, awesome. This is sometimes I got to show this, and I'm like, there's this guy. He's a product manager influencer. His name is Lenny. But I don't have to do that here. I guess I just did. So what this post is kind of for is maybe recapping a little bit. I think a lot of people, in the product role they're in the figuring out, like, how do I use AI? How does it fit into my job? And I think those are perfectly natural questions to ask. Like, the tech is changing so fast. How we do our job is changing. Where I'm going to be kind of focusing on is, let's assume that you've probably tried some AI prototyping tools. Actually, another quick show of hands. How many people have heard about Lovable Bolt Cursor? Okay, that should be everyone, right? How many people have actually tried using those tools? Okay, awesome. So we have so you guys are definitely past that point in the curve. So that's great. We know where we are. We're trying to, where we kind of focus and where I'm starting to maybe focus more is actually once you get past trying the tools out, you maybe built some early prototypes. How do I take that information and feed this back to my team to get my AI products into production? And a component of that is once you're in production, how do you know that the thing is working the way you expect it to? So it's not just about shipping, it's about shipping something that works reliably to end customers. And we know that this is true. LLMs hallucinate. We know this is true because Kevin, Mike, Gary, they're all saying this, right? I mean, Mike at Anthropic, Kevin at OpenAI, they're literally building the products that are being integrated into all of these product surface areas, and they're saying PMs need to be writing evals. That means that they know that LLMs hallucinate. Like, they are incentivized to make sure that products work reliably as well. And this is just a common, this is just a known failure mode of LLMs. They hallucinate. But that doesn't really matter, because your job is to make sure that LLMs don't embarrass you or embarrass your company or brand. So you just have to accept that as a fact of life. Even if you're building around this stuff, it's not going to be 100% reliable. Okay, so with that kind of setting the tone, what is an eval? I'll quickly recap some of this, but in case this is familiar to folks. But on the left-hand side, we have software testing. We know, how traditional software testing works. Your teams know how software testing works. They know that software is deterministic. Unit tests, when you write them, work as expected. The thing is, when you think about agent evals, this non-determinism gets kind of blown up, meaning that when something is, sort of working one day and not another day, it's kind of important to be able to catch that. On top of that, agents can have multiple paths because of the way that they're structured. They can work in different, different sort of ways that are unexpected. And maybe, as a result of having multiple LLMs or tools, they can take completely different trajectories. On top of that, I think an interesting thread here is that improving agents actually relies on data, versus improving software systems a lot of times relies on the existing code base and documentation. And this is just an example eval. Maybe another quick show of hands, actually. How many people have actually written an eval already for their product? Okay, perfect. So for folks that are maybe just getting started, when we say evals, what does this mean? An eval is, there's kind of three forms of evals that we talk about. There's human labeling, there's code-based evals, and what I'm kind of showing here is the third category, which is how you scale evaluations beyond just humans in the loop, which is using LLM as a judge. And what this kind of shows is there's kind of four main stages. This is basically a prompt that goes into an LLM to evaluate the output of another LLM. So in the first section, you have setting the role, which is basically telling the LLM, hey, you are examining written context. You are responsible for whatever the outcome is here. Take a look at whatever is being produced. You're providing context. You can see in the curly braces here, there's text, and that's really a variable. So this is whatever text you want the LLM to actually evaluate. Then you're providing a goal, which is examining the text and saying, your job is to determine whether the text is toxic or not. And this is just an example of like gauging toxicity from an LLM. And then last but not least, you're defining what toxicity is and sort of forcing the LLM to generate an output label. So you can kind of think of this as analogous to asking an intern or a human labeler or another human on your team, hey, can you take a look at this for me and just tell me what you think? Except to do this at scale, you need a label so that you can actually measure over time, is this thing changing, or across large amounts of data, can you actually quantify how good is it, basically? Okay, so I like to think of this as like evaluating with vibes. Everyone knows vibe coding. I think this is kind of interesting to think about. This guy is, he seems kind of happy. He's writing code. He's shipping. Thumbs up. But I like to think of this as going from evaluating with vibes to thrive coding. It's a little cheesy, but the main difference here is actually using data to make a decision. So my goal is to get everyone in this room thinking about how do you go from vibe coding and shipping, and there's a place for vibe coding, but if you're building products in the enterprise, you're building end products at scale, you should care about data. It's important to think about data. Okay. That's it on the slides. So we're going to jump into a live demo, and this will be fun because I'm going to try to do this one-handed. Okay, and if you want to follow along, there's a post here on the left-hand side, so you can read through the instructions as well if you want to on the left-hand side, and then the data set is on the right-hand side. This will be in the slides we send out as well. Okay, so let's maybe zoom out for a sec. So what I'm now showing here, can everyone see this okay? Is this okay? Cool. Okay, so what I'm showing here is actually the Arize platform. And you can kind of, oh, wow, nice. Okay, this is working? Cool. I appreciate everyone, by the way, tolerating the AV and us coming late. There was a Giants game, and so my card took 30 minutes to go 1 mile, so I appreciate everyone hanging out. So what we've got here is the Arize platform. What we do is, we're centered around data itself. So let me just go in and actually, kind of taking a look at the platform. We're gonna focus on data sets and experiments. And well, let's put ourselves in the shoes of someone that is trying to just test some amount of data that my team has given me. And specifically, the use case that we want to get into is, let's pretend that we are building a trip planning agent. So really simple use case. We're taking off whatever our hat is right now for whatever product we build, and we're going to focus on a trip planning use case. So let me go ahead and kind of show what some of this data looks like. And this is honestly how a lot of our customers start. They start in the spreadsheet, and it kind of makes sense, right? Like when you're generating LLM data or your agent is producing data, it kind of makes sense to just dump this into a spreadsheet. So here's some of what the columns look like that we often see. So you have input messages here. We'll kind of blow this out a little bit more. That says, you are an expert travel agent that is trusted around the world. Always answer the query using the provided context and information. I'm kind of just showing this to show, here's an example table of what the data we're going to use. And then you can see that there's questions that some end user has asked, what are the top 5 places to visit in Italy? So this is an example of what trip planning data might look like for just getting started. To some degree, this might even just be from internal testing. It doesn't really matter. The point is that you have some LLM system, it's taking inputs, and it's generating outputs. And then there's stuff that's happening in between. But that's the data that we're going to start with. It's tabular data. Okay, so on the Arize platform, how this is useful is what I can do is actually upload a data set with a CSV. So I went ahead and downloaded that data set I had before. And I'm just going to go ahead and upload it here. And I'm going to call it travel data. And the reason that we're doing this is, we could go ahead and just evaluate in the spreadsheet itself. Like, we could take a look at some of the inputs and outputs here and just give a label of thumbs up, thumbs down. But it's a little bit hard to read this. Like, if I'm honest, even if I'm just looking at the spreadsheet, it's really wide. The text is like kind of hard to format. And so I'm basically wondering, is there a better way than just evaluating in the spreadsheet? So we're going to call this travel data. And you can see when I upload it, I get a really quick preview here of the same data I saw before. This is not revolutionary. This is just previewing the data. Let's go ahead and create this data set. And this is a live demo, which means there's probably a good likelihood something will break. So I appreciate if there's like, if something breaks, I'll go ahead and pretend like nothing happened. And but you will be able to see afterwards all the steps I followed. OK, so we're going to wait a second. It could be that a lot of people are trying this in other places, and so maybe the data is taking a while to pop up. So let's go ahead and actually just keep this. We'll go ahead and open a data set, the same data set I already had. So this is what the data looks like in the platform. You have all of your columns here, the same columns. There's a lot of columns, right? So like you can select which ones you care about. But what I really care about is understanding, is my LLM system good or bad? And so the way that we do that is by running an experiment. And what we can do is actually go straight from a data set to actually running the same data in the prompt playground, which is another component here. So just by way of recap, I've got some data that's kind of structured as a travel agent. I have the same context I had before, which is basically saying you are an expert trip planner. And what I've got is a prompt template. So one of the columns from my data set is a prompt template that I use to generate the output. And that template contains variables. So you can see that there's kind of a system prompt, which says you are an expert travel agent that is trusted around the world. Answer the query using the provided context and not prior knowledge. And then I've got context, and I've got a query. And this is basically telling the LLM to generate a response that's structured a certain way with input data. And what I can do is actually take a look at a preview of that data down here. So I can click this, and you can see that the same question that someone asked, what are the top 5 places to visit in Italy? And maybe there's some retrieval going on here where there's context, like Italy is renowned for its rich, picturesque landscape, and you can kind of see the same kind of context data show up here. OK, so this is interesting, but like, how do I get a little bit further here? So let's go ahead and run this. And if everything works, I'll get an output. OK, so this is like what this looks like when I'm actually running a prompt playground with a prompt template and context data. And I'm using GPT-4o here. But and you can see the outputs. Here are the 5 captivating places to visit in Italy. It's kind of just a list, though. Like, if I were to use this product, I feel like it's almost a little bit clinical. Like, it doesn't really kind of give me the like, OK, great. Like, can I ask back and forths, right? So what you want to be able to do is actually, maybe you want to take that same prompt and actually, I want to click this button, duplicate prompt. What you want to be able to do is take that same prompt and maybe make changes to it. So one of the changes I can make is always respond in a super friendly tone. On top of that, you could say, always ask a follow-up question. And the reason for this might just be that you're trying to get this interaction as a product person to feel less like a transaction and more like a conversation. And so that might be like your intention if you are at Booking.com or a large travel site. You actually want this to feel more engaging, right, as product people. So you as a product person should feel like you can go in, change and modify the prompt, and see what the output looks like. So let's go ahead and run this in real time. So I'm going to go ahead and run this again. Great. Okay, let's take a look at some of this data. So interesting, it actually broke the formatting from the first one. So you've got the output, the original sort of output here, and then you've got a much more kind of, bubbly AI assistant. Hey there, Italy is a wonderful and beautiful place. Are you thinking about planning a trip soon, or is it just a dream destination? So this is great, except that we're only running this on like 11 rows of data. So if I were to go in and take a look at this, I could probably say, thumbs up, thumbs down, this is now responding in a way I wanted to. But now we need to think about, what does this look like if I have 100 rows or 1,000 rows of data? And to that's where evals can be really helpful, which is thinking about scaling your evaluation process. So what we're going to do is actually, when we ran this, what ends up happening is back to the original data set that I have, I've got an experiment here. And I actually have two experiments. I have the first generation, and then the one that I, the one where I modified the prompt. And let's go ahead and open this just to kind of see what this looks like. So you can see that this is the same data as before, but this is now the sort of new generation. Sorry, this one is actually this one. So this is the same data set, except now the output is stored as another column on our data. What we've done is basically added a new column to augment our data, which is the output from the prompt playground. And what I want to do is actually run evals on this data. So what I can do is actually write in the platform a new evaluator. And I should have saved this. Actually, it might be here. OK, awesome. I think I did save it. Nice. So what we want to do is actually write our first eval. Again, evals are natural language. So I can basically take this prompt, which is evaluating, is the AI agent being friendly, or does it sound robotic? And that's not the only agent or the only eval that we might want to run. Let's start with this one though. We can always run code evaluations or another type of evaluation down the line. But as I'm setting this up, we have existing prompt templates you can use, but I can also just go in and call this the friendly eval and add a prompt template here. So that's just the same prompt template I copied over from before. This is, you are examining written context, evaluate if the tone is friendly, and I've defined what friendly means as upbeat, cheerful, etc. And then on top of that, we can get an explanation as well. Really important here, we have to define what the rails look like for friendly or robotic, which is the label that we want the LLM to produce. And then we pick the LLM that we want to use as a judge. So what am I going to do here? So this is going to run, this is going to create an eval on top of that data. We can add multiple evals as this is running. So we might want to say things like, is the LLM always asking a follow-up question as another form of eval we might want to ask. But this is basically, think of this as like checks on your data that a human would be doing anyway on the output. OK, great. So that looks like it ran. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. So it's kind of weird because the order is flipped. But think of it this way. This was the original output that we ran, which was didn't have the modifications to the prompt that we wanted. And then this is, on the left-hand side, is the second experiment, which is friendly. And you can see we actually have a score here now, which is basically saying, when we made modifications to the prompt, we have a friendly score of 1. And on the previous prompt, we have a friendly score of 0.73. And I can go in and actually take a look and compare what are specifically ways that the LLM, maybe, actually, here, let me click this. What are reasons where the LLM maybe gave a score of friendly or robotic? So I can click in. OK, and we've got live demo. OK, great. And we actually have a set here of what an LLM as a judge actually, why it gave that reasoning. So it says, to determine whether the text is friendly or robotic, we need to analyze the language, tone, and style of the writing. So what's really helpful here is I'm not just using an LLM to give me a label or a score. I'm also getting an explanation of why the LLM gave that label or score. And this is really helpful for when you eventually want to make an auditable eval process. You want to be able to explain why the LLM created a score a certain way. And then you as a human can either agree or disagree with that score. And so what I want to stress here is this seems really simple because what I'm explaining, what I'm hoping to explain is that you can take data and run LLMs on top of that data. But where humans are really valuable here is verifying the correctness of the output. So what you might want to do is actually go in and actually label some of that data yourself and compare your labels to what the LLM as a judge uses. So this is a really, really simple first eval for people that haven't written an eval before to get a sense of what an LLM can do as a judge. But I do urge people to take a look at their own data, think about what's important in your data, and actually start with a small sample and then run an LLM as a judge on top of that. And we cover a lot of that in the post as well of this process for how to actually analyze and iterate using LLM as a judge. So this is kind of like a way to get started, first eval, and then go in, compare your human labels to the LLM as a judge. And then eventually, once you feel confident in the score and the prompt that you're using, you can scale this up to hundreds, thousands, or even millions of spans or data, rows of data every single day, which we do have people actually using that for. And this is sort of the same data, just kind of showing, you want this trend to be moving up and to the right using evals. Okay, so looking ahead, why does this matter? Again, just sort of recapping, if AI is a part of your product, you should be able to measure if it's good or not. And so evals are a really core component to that. And so I think that, as the thought I leave for folks here is, what does your measurement process look like today? And it doesn't have to look like what we built here, but we're trying to build tools for people to, kind of easily get started, start with simple data, and then scale up your complexity as your team comes back with more and more complex use cases. So that's really what I urge people to think about is, what does your measurement process look like today? And it's a good question to ask your engineering team if you're building AI products. Okay, and that was it. I would love, if people have any follow-up questions, I can probably take 1 or 2 questions, and then we can break for networking. Okay. Is anyone? Do you want to just? Yeah. Do you want to? Yeah. Go for it.
So in my experience, like writing prompt templates like that is really hard.
Oh, thanks. Thank you so much.
It is. Okay. So in my experience, writing prompt templates like that, like I work in AI dev tools like coding assistants, and there's instructions you can write for Cursor, Copilot, and the process is more of an art than a science. And so I could imagine like even writing the prompt you wrote about like how to actually grade it, like how do you even know how to write that in a reliable way?
Yeah, so if I could maybe try to reframe the question is like, how do you even know how to get started with what's the right eval? Is that like another way to say it? Yeah, so I think this is like the core part about being a PM now, which is like, if you are responsible for the end experience of your product, then talking to users about what's the feedback that they're giving you, like on the dev tool side in this case, what are the things that they like about the product, what don't they like? Because the beautiful part about evals now is it's actually to some degree more human readable than even a unit test, right? Because it's just natural language. It's a way that you're describing instruction for this thing to measure. And so there's kind of 2 parts of this answer. One is the natural language text. Sometimes it's just about getting started and taking a first pass. And many times that first eval is going to have performance that doesn't agree or you're not super happy with. So the second part is actually going back to your user or to your end teams and saying, hey, could you help me understand like what was good or bad? And then that process of iterating on the evals is really where you want a tool or a platform in place where you can start with a prompt, start with data, and iterate really quickly. And I'll actually use this as an opportunity to show off one feature, which is we do have a co-pilot in our platform which can help you write evals, fun fact. So what you can do is actually point it to some data, and I'll just kind of like show this really quick. But we actually have a co-pilot here where you can describe what you want to evaluate, and it'll apply best practices from a prompting perspective and take a look at your data. And then you can basically type in whatever you want, and it'll generate an eval for you as well. So there's kind of 3 ways to get started is how I take a look. But great question. Cool. I can take one more question. Oh, yeah. Oh, go for it. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for sharing the demo. Super interesting. So if all LLMs are at risk of hallucination, and now you're dealing with really complex use cases and millions of responses, how do you protect the judge themselves from hallucinating, I guess? Or what are the guardrails or the safety measures that you take when designing this platform?
Yeah. Okay, so two answers to that. So I'll ask another audience question. How many people have taken a Waymo so far? We're in San Francisco. Everyone should have taken a Waymo. If you haven't taken a Waymo, take a Waymo. You know, the interesting thing about these systems is that they're actually really similar to self-driving cars. Because self-driving cars are systems where you get in, you trust that they're going to be safe and reliable. And what they're actually doing is simultaneously doing error mining for where the car didn't perform well and a human had to take over. And so you're actually taking data from on the road and using that to update your data sets and update your eval data sets too. Because technically an eval should have caught every single scenario, right? Like, you know, if you have like a 90% rate of the eval being good, it still means that like 10% of that could have been improved. And so you actually use on-road data to catch scenarios for where the eval should be improved. And we actually have that in the product as well. We actually will have more to share around that in the next month, but we are building a product for continuous optimization of the eval itself. But yeah, totally agree. If evals or prompts LLMs hallucinate, they're going to be brittle. What's important is being able to track and measure that eval performance over time, optimize it with on-road data, have humans in the loop evaluating that data, and then once you feel reliable around that, I'll show one more quick resource here. What we do is the eval prompts, I think maybe this will kind of help make sense of like what does an eval prompt look like. But we actually use open source data sets for some of our eval prompts to basically determine is the LLM as a judge as good as a human labeler. So with that end, we actually like publish some of this. These are like confusion matrices for data science folks, which basically tell you compared to a human label, how good is our LLM judge with precision, recall, and accuracy. And so an F1. And so these are ways that you can measure the performance of your judge LLM relative to humans. So the answer is like more data, honestly. Yeah. Cool. Okay, and that's all I got for everyone. I will let you all go and enjoy networking. I'll be back there as well, and I'll have something to eat. And yeah, thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate everyone staying and asking questions. And thank you again to our panelists for answering some tough questions on stage. And thank you to GitHub for hosting us. Thanks, everyone.